this Girimānanda Sutta. So we've discussed like a few lessons already. So these sessions are a bit interactive. So all these topics are actually suggested by the participants. Yeah, because no point for me speaking something that you're not interested. So the participant that suggested this topic is also not here today. So I'll try my best to make it interesting for you. And this topic is again probably not meant for beginners. Not meant for beginners. And as you can see from the picture, this is meant for like very sick, very ill persons, and the Buddha is supposed to like give a teaching to administer to those very sick patient. So in this case, this is a monk, and instruction to the monk versus instruction to a lay person can be very different also. So for this case, this is for monk, and it's not an ordinary monk. It's probably a veteran meditator. So the instructions are a bit profound, a bit deep. It's like meditation kind of instructions. So in this meditation class, we try to break down and probably try to pick up some tips on how to improve our practice. So that's the whole idea. I try my best to incorporate in the routine and make it more practical. And let's go through this Girimānanda Sutta, and it's called the 10 perceptions. 10 kinds of contemplations you need to do. Okay, so the very quick and brief recap. This monk is sick. His name is called Girimānanda, and the Buddha didn't want to see him. The Buddha just said, ask Venerable Ananda, which is the attendant, to just repeat the instructions to him. Okay, so these are the 10 perceptions in short. So we've covered actually most of it already. From 1 to 9, we've covered like almost everything. So a very brief recap. Number 1 is on impermanence. Number 2, non-self. Number 3, unattractiveness. Number 4, drawbacks. 5, abandoning. Number 6, dispassion. Number 7, cessation. Number 8, perception of distaste for every world. And number 9, perception of the undesirability of all fabrications. And number 10, mindfulness of in and out breathing. So this is like, hey, normally people think like breath meditation is supposed to be like for beginners, should be place number 1, but this one is place number 10, right? So it's like the rest of the 1 to 9 is like for those who are quite advanced and already quite detached, then you're able to do all those. So that's why this Girimānanda is supposedly a more veteran kind of meditator, so he can experience all this. And then number 10, you can watch the breath. So alternatively, what we did last week was we tried to do this number 3, which is this unattractiveness, and this impermanence, and this non-self, and we do a bit of those quite standard routine. We think of the impurities of the body, wishing well and happy, think of impermanence, and once we think of impermanence, we do it long enough, it may lead to a certain reduction of this craving, called this cessation, or the process of cessation. So we kind of like at least tick some of the checklist. So it makes the breathing easier. If we straight away start off with the breathing, a lot of people may tend to struggle if, let's say, their breath technique is not balanced enough. They do not have the holistic approach to the breath meditation. Some people just want to focus on the breath, just want to fixate the mind, and a lot of people end up struggling. So they have a lot of this. Some people meditate until you see their face have constipation like that. So a lot of struggling. So what we are doing is, if a person does some insight, some reflection, some detachment, it makes the breathing easier. Right? So that is another strategy. But if, let's say, your breath technique is quite comprehensive, it covers both detachment and whatever not, and by all means they can just straight away do the breath. Okay, so I'll just skip all those instructions and go to number 10. Yeah, we talk about all this. If you want to look at the previous lessons, you can look at the live stream on Facebook. It's under this MSBS.my. Yeah. Okay, so today we are covering this mindfulness of the in and out breathing. So the in and out breathing here is very similar to this Anapanasati Sutta, the mindfulness of breathing sutta. So it has like the 16 steps of this breath meditation. So it's considered very technical, and it may take one whole lesson to complete. So for those who are like attending my physical lessons on Saturdays, I don't teach this as the first lesson. I'm actually going to teach this in the 4th lesson. Yeah, so but never mind, for those who already joined, you can have a preview of this breath meditation. Okay, so I'll just read through and I just comment whenever possible. So number 10, and what is mindfulness of in and out breathing? There is the case where a monk, having gone to the wilderness, to the shade of a tree, or to an empty building, sits down folding his legs crosswise, holding his body erect, and establishing mindfulness to the fore. Always mindful he breathes in, mindful he breathes out. So normally the beginning instruction talks about the physical setup, what kind of environment or posture is suitable or conducive for this practice. So it's encouraged one to look for a secluded area, not where someone else can disturb you, not when you're doing your chores or you need to be busy running errands. So you need to be like you have some quiet space for yourself, right? So if let's say you are in a city and you don't have necessarily a forest, so you need a quiet building. And so you mentioned an empty building, that's also fine. It doesn't have to be a forest. And ideally, it's practice sitting down. Yeah, sitting down. So the whole idea is as long as the body is still. So the Buddha can actually do it while lying down. Like in the Maha Sutta, the last days of the Buddha, he was lying down and doing his breath meditation and so on. Yeah? So you can actually do it in static position, right? But for training, I don't encourage you to lie down first. You just adopt a sitting posture. So that will be the ideal kind of posture. So it mentions here mindfulness to the fore. So it's very specific mindfulness to like in front of you. So if you look at like the Buddha images, his eyes are always gazed downwards. Yeah, he's not like looking up, looking around, looking upstairs. Right? It's like gazing downwards. So mindfulness to the fore. So it's kind of in front, downwards, probably like 45 degrees. So that's like the ideal case to make the mind not so distracted, because there are lots of interesting things to see. You know, your mind can be running around. So we try to collect the mind, gazing downwards first, establish the fore. So even if you close your eyes and want to watch your breath, it's also within that area. Okay, then always mindful, he breathes in, mindful, he breathes out. Okay, so this mindful or mindfulness has 4 aspects. If you want to talk about right mindfulness, there's mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of the feeling, mindfulness of the states of mind, and mindfulness of the Dhamma, that is the phenomenon. So there are total 16 steps, and each of the mindfulness have 4 steps. So mindfulness of the body have 4 steps, mindfulness of feeling have 4 steps, mindfulness of the mind 4 steps, and mindfulness of the Dhamma 4 steps. Right? So it's not just watching the in and out breath only. It's not that simple. There are lots of things to look out for, or there's lots of steps. So I'm just going to go through all these steps. Okay, so these are the first 4 steps actually. So breathing in long, he discerns, I am breathing in long. Or breathing out long, he discerns, I am breathing out long. So that's the first step. So when you see the full stop, that's the one step. Or breathing in short, he discerns, I am breathing in short. Or breathing out short, he discerns, I am breathing out short. So that's the second step. He discerns himself, I will breathe in sensitive to the entire body. He trains himself, I will breathe out sensitive to the entire body. Yeah? So actually that's the third step. He trains himself, I will breathe in calming bodily fabrications. He trains himself, I will breathe out calming bodily fabrications. So that's the fourth step. Okay, so total these are the 4 steps regarding to mindfulness of the body. That means something tangible, there is evidence, it is not imagination, you're not trying to theorize. So this mindfulness is basically your own personal or observable kind of evidence. Yeah. Okay, so for the in and out breathing, what it means here, again, there are many schools, there are many interpretations. You don't have to purposely follow the first step, must breathe in long and breathe out long. You don't have to do that. So what my routine, what we normally do is, we let your in and out breathing be your natural reflex action. So it doesn't matter is it long or short, but you must know, that's all. You must know whether is it a long breath or short breath. Yeah, so that is the idea. Okay, and the next few steps, especially the second half, sensitive to the entire body. Again, this one is different schools and different interpretation. Some would say your entire physical body from head to toe, so that is one interpretation. Some other schools will say, this body refers to the breath body. That means the area of attention where you feel the in and out breathing. Some people just feel below the nostril one small point. Some people feel the abdomen one small point. So they call this the breath body, right? So in my opinion, it actually doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, right? So that's the my stance of this body. So what we do in my routine is, first we sort of feel the entire body, the elements, and we kind of relax them. And if you want, then later on you can find this breath body. And this breath body can be the entire body again, or it can be one small area of your choice. So that would be the routine we will be trying out later. Okay, then the whole idea is eventually you need to calm down the body, right? And if your body is not calm, then the more you practice, the more tense, the more frustrated, and then something is wrong, right? So these first 4 steps don't exist by self only. It requires the right kind of reflection, the right kind of intention setting to make the body calm. You cannot just sit there and expect things to happen by itself. Some people, if you do not have the right motivation or the right reflection, they always aiming for something, always pushing, then they're always agitated. You cannot calm down. So you need the right reflection also. But again, these 16 steps is just a guideline. It doesn't necessarily have to come in this sequence. It doesn't have to be watching the in and out breath first. Later on we look at the other steps, and especially the last few steps to talk about the reflections. At this point of time, or any point of time, if you have any questions, do feel free to unmute your mic and speak out, yeah, because now I'm doing the presentation form. I can't see all the participants on the screen. Okay, so the next 4 steps, that will be mindfulness of feeling. Mindfulness of feeling. Okay, so this the first step in these 4 steps is he trains himself. I will breathe in sensitive to rapture. He trains himself. I will breathe out sensitive to rapture. Yeah, so this is the first of the 4. And the second step, he trains himself. I will breathe in sensitive to pleasure. He trains himself. I will breathe out sensitive to pleasure. So that's the second step. He trains himself. I will breathe in sensitive to mental fabrication. So this one's closer to the mind level, really. He trains himself. I will breathe out sensitive to mental fabrications. And the last step, he trains himself. I will breathe in calming mental fabrications. He trains himself. I will breathe out calming mental fabrications. Okay, so this is the 4 steps regarding mindfulness to the feelings. So as you can see over here, so there's this breath meditation. There are so many schools now, and some schools would say this breath meditation is, for example, purely vipassana, purely insight meditation. And some schools will tell you, no, breath meditation is purely samatha, purely concentration meditation. But as you can see from here, at least now, at least this step, it's gearing towards samatha meditation first, gearing towards concentration. So if you look at the first 2 steps in this feeling, breathe in sensitive to rapture, that means you're mindful, that means you need to be aware of this rapture, and aware to pleasure, rapture and pleasure. And this is not even entering jhanas. You haven't come down the mind yet. Yeah? So this is basically mindful of pleasant feelings. Mindful of pleasant feelings. Right? So in my routine, I'll be using this loving kindness. So this is where loving kindness come in. You breathe in, wish the breath well. Breathe out, wish the breath happy. Right, so this rapture and pleasure, or some may interpret as joy and happiness, is considered very minuscule compared to the jhanas. Yeah? So this is just like a pleasant feeling. It has not yet entered jhanas. This is just an incentive for the mind to come together, to collect the mind. Because initially when you start off, the mind will be very scattered. So you need some pleasant feeling for the mind to come back. So this is just an incentive. Right? So a person needs to be mindful of this rapture and pleasure. That means you need to deliberately look out for this rapture and pleasure for the mind to recollect. And when the mind starts to recollect, then you are able to be sensitive of mental fabrication. So when the mind is scattered, it's a bit hard to detect the mind or feel the mind or the mental energy, that is mental fabrication. But if the mind is more collected due to the previous step, this sensitive to rapture and pleasure, then the mind is more and more collected. It's like creating a kind of intensifying the concentration of the mind. Still not yet jhanas, so it's more like gathering the scattered mind to like one area, let it settle down. So once it clumps together, it becomes more obvious. If it's like scattered all over the place, a bit hard to detect the mind. But if you incentivize it, you have this pleasure and happiness, you bring the mind together, then it kinds of like clumps together, the mind clumps together, then it becomes more obvious. So you become aware of mental fabrications, the calming down the mind, and then you need to continue to calm down the mind. Right, calming of this fabrication. So in our routine, we still continue to use this loving kindness. Inhale well, exhale happy. I wish the breath well and happy. So by doing so, you have the right thought of reducing aversion. So aversion is one kind of craving that causes our suffering. So by reducing this craving or aversion, the natural byproduct will be the mind calming down. Yeah, so you're tackling like 50% of the problem. So the craving is either greed or hatred. So you're trying to tackle the hatred part. So you kind of like make peace with all the sensations, make peace with this the in and out breathing, and eventually the mind will calm down. Yeah? So that's the 4 steps. Okay, then now this is the 3rd quartet, mindfulness of the mind. Mindfulness of the mind. So I'll just read out the 4 instructions. He trains himself, I'll breathe in, sensitive to the mind. He trains himself, I will breathe out, sensitive to the mind. So this is the 1st step. And the 2nd one, he trains himself, I will breathe in, gladdening the mind. He trains himself, I will breathe out, gladdening the mind. So that's the 2nd step. He trains himself, I will breathe in, steadying the mind. He trains himself, I will breathe out, steadying the mind. So that's the 3rd step. And the last step, he trains himself, I will breathe in, releasing the mind. He trains himself, I will breathe out, releasing the mind. Okay, so all these terms will get more, either sounds repetitive or sounds confusing. Huh? Okay, so earlier on, I will just go back to the previous slide. Okay, so you see there are 2 terms. The last instruction for the mindfulness of feeling, you have these mental fabrications. Mental fabrication. And then over here, you see there is the mind. Sensitive to mind. Yeah, so these mental fabrications and the mind is 2 different things. Yeah, briefly sensitive to the mind. So our area of attention where we feel the breath, that is still not yet the mind we're talking about here. So if you can see from these instructions, it mentions steadying the mind. So in a lot of other, I would say, interpretation, they call this unification of the mind, or one-pointedness of the mind. You need to steady the mind. The mind is to unify, have this one-pointedness. Okay, and this one-pointedness, why I say it's not this, it's not feeling one point, it's not feeling at the abdomen, it's not feeling at this below the nostril, because this can be done at the 1st step. When you feel the in and out breathing, a person can put their attention here, but then the mind is still running all over the place. So that is called lots of mental fabrication. And if, let's say, the mental fabrication start to calm down due to your repeated right reflection and watching of the breath, then you can get to be sensitive of the mind. Right, so this is a bit hard to explain, so I'm going to give an analogy or a metaphor. So the common metaphor would be like this mud solution. A pond, for example, a pond, a muddy pond. So in order to get clear water, you need to have the sand sink down. We call it sedimentation. Let the sand or the mud settle down. So requires some time for the mud or the sand to settle down. Then the surface or the top layer will be the clearer solution. Right? So this clearer solution would represent this mind. And will represent this mind. Whereas these fabrications, these mental fabrications from earlier, is actually the mud. And the mud and the sand. So once you calm down that mental fabrication, then you can be more sensitive of this mind. So this mind now got many layers. So the attention is one kind of mind, the stray thoughts is another kind of mind, the calming down is another kind of mind. So there are so many layers of mind. Right? So it is only when you practice, then you can get to encounter this kind of different experiences. Then these terms start to slowly make sense. If not, you see a lot of mental and the mind here, mental there, mental fabrication there, and you kind of like, hey, it's the same thing, right? So no, it's a different thing. So there are many layers to the mind, or many different definitions of these mental cognitive processes. So this is more like towards the end product after the mental fabrications come down. Alright, so in our routine, we call this detachment, and we call this sinking of this fabrication, sinking of this craving, sinking of this mind or this mental fabrication until it reaches stability point. Yeah, stability point. So this stability point is this steadying of the mind. Steadying of the mind. So the mind will settle, will continue to settle. So different people may feel different things. Some people may feel certain tension. Initially there are a lot of stray thoughts, so it may manifest as a certain form of tension, and it's not a heavy tension, but maybe a slight kind of light tension. And the more you calm down, you can feel these things settling down, settling down. So it will settle to a point until it kind of like cannot settle any further. The rate of settling is like negligible. Then we call this the stability point. Right? So in the process, you need to gladden the mind. So you breathe in, breathe out. Still the well and happy part, right? Gladden the mind. So you don't do this in a forceful manner. You don't push. You don't strain yourself. So this is not to... Some people, when they talk about concentration, sometimes the term concentration can be a bit misleading. People think you must focus. So you focus and you force and you have a lot of tension. Right? So this one, you need to gladden the mind. We let the settling be the byproduct. The emphasis is on the right thought or the right reflection. Right? So watching the in and out breath by itself, there's no spiritual value. Yeah, anybody can watch the in and out breathing. So the important thing here is the right reflection. So in our routine, we use loving kindness first, which is in and out breath, well and happy, for the mind to calm down. And once you have this steadying of the mind, and then it mentions here, I will release the mind. Breathe in and out, releasing the mind. So a lot of people don't really explain what it is, releasing the mind. So this releasing here is actually entering the jhanas, entering the different levels of concentration. Right, so this one can be extrapolated with this Dipa Sutta, DIPA. So there's another sutta that corresponds to this breath meditation. It mentions all the 16 steps of this regular breath meditation, and then it follows on how to use these 16 steps to enter all the levels of this jhana, so this concentration. So basically, when the mind sinks to this stability point, it's a bit like creating potential energy. It's like a spring. When you compress the spring, it has certain kind of potential energy, and once you release the spring or you release the mind, it will spring up. It will basically jump. So the mind, once you release the mind, after steadying it for some time, you release the mind, it will evolve to another state of mind. So basically, that's this instruction, releasing the mind. So at this point of time, it's still like the breath meditation is like very samatha focused. And now we're going to the last 4 instructions. Okay, so these are the last 4 instructions, mindfulness of the Dhamma. He trains himself, I will breathe in, focusing on inconstancy, impermanence. He trains himself, I will breathe out, focusing on inconstancy. So that's the first step. And the second step, he trains himself, I will breathe in, focusing on dispassion or fading. He trains himself, I will breathe out, focusing on dispassion. So that's the second step. And the third step, he trains himself, I will breathe in, focusing on cessation. He trains himself, I will breathe out, focusing on cessation. So that's the third step. And the final step, he trains himself, I will breathe in, focusing on relinquishment. He trains himself, I will breathe out, focusing on relinquishment. Right, so this Ananda is called mindfulness of in and out breathing. So the last 4 steps is on this vipassana, on insight, on detachment and wisdom. Right, so so in my routine, what we normally do is we use this step first before releasing the mind. So this inconstancy can actually help the mind detach further or calm down further, because craving has mainly 2 kinds, greed or hatred. So this loving kindness only tackles hatred, and while this inconstancy tackles greed. So once you reduce greed and hatred, the mind will settle down much further. So once the mind is very stable, then you can do the releasing part. So interestingly, if you look at these steps on dispassion, cessation and relinquishment, it is very similar to the first, we call it the 9 steps. Alright, so you talk about impermanence of the breath. So there's a first perception, and then talk about dispassion. That's the 6th perception, and we talk about cessation of the breathing, or using the breath to reflect on cessation. Then you have number 7, perception of cessation, and then you have relinquishment. So relinquishment is I think it's abandoning, same as number 5, perception abandoning. So the last 4 steps in the breath meditation covers the initial part of the 10 steps of this, the 10 reflections, right? So so from this conclusion, you can see that this monk, he's not beginner. He already might have experienced all this impermanence and cessation, and you don't have to start him from the beginning, know how to watch the in and out breath and eventually realize cessation. So he already experienced all those. That's why he can just straight away use these kind of reflections, the first 9, before going to the breath. Okay, so now going back to the breath instructions. Anyone has any questions at this point of time? Or before I finish, I'm going to end this sutta first. Now, Ananda, if you go to the monk Girimānanda and tell him these 10 perceptions, it's possible that when he hears these 10 perceptions, his disease may be allayed. So this is unique for him. So probably the Buddha sees some like special kind of causation, a special kind of karmic link that enable him to recover from his illness. So please do not use it for your own medical treatment. There's a 99% chance it may not work. Then Venerable Ananda, having learned these 10 perceptions in the Blessed One's presence, went to Venerable Girimānanda and told them to him. As Venerable Girimānanda heard these 10 perceptions, his disease was allayed, and Venerable Girimānanda recovered from his disease. That was how Venerable Girimānanda's disease was abandoned. Alright, so I think that's the end of the sutta, and I'm going to stop the share screen, open the floor to Q&A. Anyone has any questions can unmute the mic, or you can type in the chat. Yeah, say that there's something. Yeah.
Yeah, Bante. Just want to ask about the statement on releasing the mind.
Yep.
Would you be able to explain a little bit more this statement and the method?
Yeah. Okay. So, similar to what I've shared earlier, so we need to calm down the mental fabrications. So we are using these thoughts of loving kindness, wish the breath well and happy, so that the mental fabrications can calm down. So when it gets calmed down and kind of clump together, when the mind starts to clump together, calm down and clump together from the scattered state, then it will be more obvious. Yeah, so these sort of desire-related fabrications will sort of calm down to a certain point where it cannot settle any further. So we call this the steadying of the mind. Yeah, so once the mind is sort of steady, then we will sort of familiarize with it for a while. It kind of create a kind of potential energy. So basically the calming of the mind is creating this potential energy like a spring. And then once we let go, we just make a mental wish to let go, and then the mind will evolve.
Am I right that this mind you're referring to is the state of correctly? Is it like a kind of the overall sensation, and how like overall perception, that perception at that point?
Basically, it's, you don't have to overthink or overcomplicate things too much. Basically, it's a difference between tense mind, overthinking mind versus calm and settled mind. That's all. So the whole idea is initially you just take note of this difference. Yeah.
Right. So when you're calm, so it's a sensation. It's just that when we apply your method of say loving kindness, you get this pleasant sensation.
Yeah. So it's very similar. If in our loving kindness routine is like the restricted form of loving kindness, the baseline emotion. So yeah, very similar to that. So we are trying to achieve this baseline emotion.
And so then to release it means that I'm going to kind of wish it away.
Not wish it away, is just by making a wish to release the mind, you are no longer focusing on that point for a very brief moment. So by not focusing, it will kind of like spring up. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Anyone else have any questions? So this is a very technical step we'll be trying out in the guided session later. So if you can follow, then good for you. If you cannot follow, because everybody's rate of settling is very different, if you cannot follow, then just stick to the previous step, until your mind calms down. Yeah. So that is the most we can do. And if you really need to watch the replay, then you can go to the Facebook live again and watch back the video. Okay, any further questions? If not, we go for a 5-minute break. It's 9:15, we come back at 9:20, yeah? So you can do your stretching, go to the toilet, and I see you back at 9:20. Okay, I'm back. Let's see who is back early.
Sorry, Bante, now since got some time, can I ask some questions?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, pertaining to the breath, right? So starting, maybe we just go in because you mentioned earlier that we don't have to. This does not need to go in sequence. So what I actually feel, what I am practicing is I go in. I'm able to go in and calm the body, and I just watch the feelings. I know that I'm pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. So there will come to a time whereby earlier on you mentioned about experiencing the mind. Is it when the mind doesn't move that is called experiencing the mind?
Yeah, there's like something aside from bodily sensations.
Because it's like there's no body sensation, but you are able to watch your breath, and you can connect, you can watch your breath at the same time you're able to watch the mind. So that is where I am able to reach right now. So what I contemplate is always because I follow your class. So right now I put in impermanent. So I know that all things are impermanent. So it's like I feel good when I'm doing that. I feel good, but I don't know how rapture is, but I just know that I feel good. That's it.
Yeah. So that's good enough to be an incentive for the mind to get collected.
Yeah. Correct. So I like sitting in this, but then it's like sometimes I'm so afraid I get attached. But then I like the part whereby you teach us this is impermanent. So 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 this is the right way to go through it, right?
Yeah, so the impermanence reflection is the anti-attachment formula. Yeah.
Thank you, Bante.
Okay, no problem. Okay, anyone else? Any questions? If not, I'm not sure when the rest have returned from your toilet break. Okay, then I presume everyone is back, so I'm going to start. Yeah, it's more than 5 minutes. Not everyone's turning on the camera, so I'm speaking to unseen beings. Yeah, tomorrow happened to be the Hungry Ghost Festival. Hungry Ghost Festival month. Okay, so let's begin. We mute our mic. Make sure we find a comfortable sitting posture. Make sure the back is upright and the rest of the body relaxed. Okay, so we're going to apply a bit of this Girimānanda's strategy. We're going to reflect a bit on this attractiveness of the body. So we're going to first visualize all the hairs of the body from head to toe. And in my routine, we first wish them well and happy, to reduce this aversion. So every time you think of a new patch of hair, wish it well and happy. New patch of hair, wish it well and happy. So the phrasing is important. We don't go and say, I wish my hair is well and happy. We try to remove the self or the mind, the I, away from the equation, because it's creating the self-cherishing kind of emotion or thoughts. And it's kind of contradicting to our detachment process. So we're going to wish the hairs well and happy, wish the hairs well and happy. Okay, then we're going to think of the impermanence of all the hairs. All the hairs go through this birth, aging, sickness, and passing away. And we just need to think of them growing and falling, many successions, basically fast forwarding the aging process. Don't have to over dramatize. Just hairs growing and falling, and as we do so, we just observe its impermanence. And so that itself, there is some calming, calming of these fabrications. So in this vipassana mode, there is a kind of calming, and later on we go back to the samatha mode, there's another kind of calming. So you just need to observe the mind, basically, the mental fabrications, how the mind settles down. Okay, then now we're switching to these nails, fingernails and toenails, and we wish them well and happy. Alright, so there's the samatha aspect of these impurities of the body, and now we're jumping to the vipassana aspect. So we're going to think of impermanence of all the nails. So all these nails go through birth, aging, sickness, death. So we think of them growing and falling, many cycles. And as we keep looping this process, if you want, you can investigate the impermanent nature of the 5 aggregates. And then you can observe this mind, how it settles down, how this craving settle down, these mental fabrications settle down. So there's no pushing. It's all about the right reflection, impermanence, and everything else is just byproduct. Okay, then next we're going to think of the teeth, all the teeth inside the mouth, and we wish it well and happy. So back to the samatha phase. So basically just to understand or familiarize the phenomena of calming to this baseline emotion. And when you switch to vipassana, what kind of phenomena will happen? Eh? And once you have reached the teeth well and happy, then you're going to think of the impermanent nature of the teeth. All the teeth go through birth, aging, sickness, and passing away. And we think of them growing and falling, many cycles. So even though the teeth fall off twice, the most, we can just keep on repeating many times. So sometimes when the mind is like unified enough, when you think of impermanence and when there's certain detachment taking place, sometimes you may find some kind of joy or rapture arise. So that is we call insight-related kind of joy, still not pertaining to any jhanas yet. And if you are skillful enough, you can customize, and you can use that joy later on in that breath meditation to gladden the mind. Okay, then we're going to now think of the skin of the entire body from head to toe. And we wish them well and happy. Every patch of skin, wish them well and happy. New patch of skin, well and happy. Okay, and now we think of the impermanent nature of the skin. All the skin go through this birth, aging, sickness, and passing away, and we think of them growing and falling, many cycles. And as we keep looping this process, if you want, you can investigate the impermanent nature of the 5 aggregates. Okay, and now we can switch to the breath meditation. So we've done all the unattractiveness and the dispassion and whatever not, and now we move to the breath meditation. So now we learn how to relax the body. So we can start to feel bodily sensations, start to recondition the mind to not visualize anymore. So in this routine, we are not visualizing anything. So basically feeling the body sensation first. Learn to calm down the body. But the previous exercises on the unattractiveness of the body should already help calm the mind, calm the body to a certain extent. Okay, so what we're going to do is feel the bodily sensations. We call this 4 elements: earth, fire, wind, water. So the breath sensation is closely related to the wind element. Any kind of movement. It could be in and out breathing, any movement, right? So any movement, anything you detect, you just wish it well and happy. Any sensation that's hard or soft, that's the earth element. And the temperature change, so any kind of temperature, hot or cold, that's the fire element. And any moisture, moist or dry, that's the water element. So in this particular case, we just take note of our in and out breathing, and we wish them well and happy. So you can choose the area where you want to feel the in and out breathing. So it can be one small area below the nose or at the abdomen or anywhere at all, or it can be the entire body. To me it doesn't matter, because that is just a stepping stone. We are not training the breath. Just like earlier, we are not training the hair, we are not training the nails, we are not training our teeth, we are not training our skin. We are just making use of these objects to calm down the mind. So wherever you place your attention, it is a condition for you to get agitated or calm down the mind. Depends on how you reflect. So once you have already picked or selected the area of attention, what you're going to do is, whenever there's an inhalation, exhalation, or any movement related to inhalation, exhalation, and you're going to wish them well and happy. So that is the minimal rate. One inhalation, well; one exhalation, happy. Anything slower than that, there's a high chance for the mind to daydream. And if your mind is more sensitive, like one inhalation, you can feel multiple changes in the elements, multiple changes in sensations, then you go for the higher count. The more right thought, the better. So what we are doing here is using skill to calm down the mind. Right thought, right effort, and repetition. And the other non-skillful way to calm down the mind is do nothing. So basically it's like waiting to fall asleep. So you're basically gambling and living things by chance. So the inhalation, breathe in well, breathe out happy. So the more you generate the right thought, the more of this craving will reduce. And the byproduct should be the calming of the mind. Or we call it calming of the mental fabrications. So we are not pushing the mind to calm down. Yeah, it's the calming is a byproduct. Emphasis is on the wishing the in and out breath well and happy, making peace with the breath sensations. So we are not struggling, we are not forcing, we are not imposing. Okay, once the mind is relatively calm, it has reached this baseline level, we're going to add some insight. So it's similar to what we've been doing earlier. So we're going to reflect on the impermanence of the breathing. So every in and out breath, instead of wishing it well and happy, we're going to take note of its changing. So we change the label to impermanence, or any word or phrase related to impermanence. You call it rising, falling, anicca, inconstant. Just pick your favorite. So the whole idea is deliberate labeling. We call it right thought. And the whole idea is to create this detachment until the craving formations settle to the stability point. So by using impermanence, any detachment or joy deriving from detachment is an incentive for gladdening the mind, or being mindful of this rapture or pleasure. Okay, if you find the sedimentation process of the mind has reached its limit or close to its limit, the rate of settling is very negligible already, then you can familiarize yourself with this state of mind. We call it stating the mind. So we, again, emphasis is on the impermanence of the in and out breathing. the side note, we take note of this emotion, this state of mind. So important to remember the emotion, because the breath meditation journey is a very emotional journey. So treat everything else as distraction, as byproduct. Emphasis is on impermanence of the breathing. And in any case, if you start to feel like the breath like disappearing like that, never mind. It's still any kind of movement, any kind of mental movement of your attention towards the area of attention of the breathing. That also considers the in and out breathing. So always mindful of impermanence. Make sure you fulfill two criteria. First criteria is the mind is relatively calm due to impermanence and detachment. Second criteria is that you take a note of this emotion. So at the baseline level, most probably the emotion is still quite bland, nothing unique at this point. So it's important to take note of the emotion. Okay, so once you fulfill the two criteria, whenever you are ready, then you can let go of this mind, just like letting go of a balloon. And once you have released the mind, then you observe any change in emotion. No need to push or do anything, let the mind evolve naturally by itself. And if let's say the emotion has like changed from bland to maybe something more pleasant, maybe more happy or more joyful, then that will indicate the first level of concentration. So we're going to multitask, take note of this emotion and the impermanence of the breathing for the mind to settle down. So every state of mind, every level, the mind will initially have clinging. So this impermanence is to impermanence of the breathing, or reflection of impermanence to the breathing is for this craving, fabrications to calm down. Okay, and the same thing, you find the mind settled or sediment to quite stable kind of resting spot, and you can familiarize with this first level of concentration. Emphasis is on the impermanence of the in-out breathing, and at the sidelines you observe the emotion. Every moment impermanence, treat everything else as a distraction and byproduct. Okay, let's say you fulfill two criteria again. Right? First criteria is the mind is calm down due to impermanence and detachment. Second criteria, you've taken note of this emotion. So in theory, the first level of concentration will have four factors: initial thinking, sustained thinking, joy, and happiness. These four things. If you cannot differentiate, then never mind. Just know it's a pleasant emotion. Along the way, then it can slowly be differentiated. And once you have the two factors or two criteria, whenever you're ready, then you can release the mind, just like releasing the balloon. And the same thing, once you release the mind, observe any change in emotion. And let's say the joy and happiness become more distinct or kind of intensify, then that will indicate the second level of this concentration. So we do the multitask thing again, take note of the emotion and the impermanence of the breathing for the mind to settle down. And the same thing, if the mind is more settled down, then we can familiarize ourselves with the second level. Emphasis is on the impermanence of the breathing, and the sidelines we take note of the emotion. Okay, make sure we fulfill these two criteria. First criteria, the mind is calm due to impermanence and detachment. Second criteria is that you've taken note of this emotion. So in theory, the second level will just have joy and happiness and no more of this initial and sustained thinking. So this initial and sustained thinking is basically a kind of background cluttering of the mind, that kind of like block off the emotion a bit. So in order to know the difference, what we're going to do is go back down to level 1. So you make a wish to return or go back down to the first level. So from second level, downgrade to the first level. And as the mind descends, you observe any change in the emotion. And if, let's say, the joy and happiness start to become muffled again, like reduced, and that will indicate the first level. And the same thing, mindful of impermanence of the breathing, for the mind to settle down. Okay, if you find the mind quite settled, then we're going to go back down again, back to baseline level, back to ground zero. And you observe any change in emotion when the mind descends. And if you are at the baseline level, make sure the emotion is bland, nothing unique, no more special emotions. And we're going to start to feel the entire body, right? The fingers and the toes. And always mindful of this impermanence, mindful of this settling of the mind, so that is actually formable through inaction. The reduction of these mental fabrications is actually the part of the cessation of craving. And every time we cling on to something, then there will be tension and stress. Okay, and with that in mind, we can slowly open our eyes, formally end the session, and formally always mindful of impermanence. Okay, anyone has any questions or problems? Okay, everyone good? Okay, if there's no issues, then we can proceed to this dedication chant. We're supposed to attend, so a bit of overtime. So this Anumodana, dedicating of merits. Akasatha ca Bhumata Devanaga Mahidika Punyang tang anumoditva Cirang rakantu loka sasanang Etavata ca amhihi Sampadang punya sampadang Sabbe deva sabbe bhuta sabbe sata anumodantu Sabba sampati siddhya. And dedication of merits to departed. Idang me nyatinang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyatinang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyatinang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. And aspiration. Imina punya kamena mame bala samagamo satang samagamo hotu yavani bana patiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And we end off with paying respects to the Buddha by giving 3 bows. So the first bow, and the second bow, and the third bow. Okay, so that's the end for tonight's session. Any announcements from parents?
Okay.
Okay, if not, then good night and see you all next week. So next week we'll start a new topic. I think Susan suggested this on the Four Noble Truths.
Oh, yes.
So we'll just talk about Four Noble Truths. Okay, and see you all next week.